now are something that I wanted to initiate in this discussion. So I just clicked recording. So I'm going to, Hell, with you on here, I'm going to give you a bit of an update. Um, the biggest issue, and that's why I have these calls, it's the good of the game, and the game isn't good. And it isn't good because of the allocation of ice time by coaches at every age. Nope. And if you are able to get a handle on that, and Tom has a handle, Rick has a handle, I think all the university coaches seem to coach what I call in a balanced, motivational, transmit belief fashion. But in minor hockey, that's not true. And coaches are cycled, and there are problems, and there's a lack of leadership, and the governing body is responsible for that. And I've advocated the mission statement exercise, but I want to tell you a story about Hockey Newfoundland, Tim, before I turn it over to you. When I went to Hockey Newfoundland, now, hell, what you might not understand, we have branches, and every province has a governing body. And they're pretty independent of one another, but yet they're under the umbrella of Hockey Canada.
But independent from them as well.
Yes, and they still sort of do their own thing, and Hockey Canada can't mandate, and they let them take or leave some things, but if you want to be certified, you have to follow their program. So Hockey Newfoundland, and back in the day when I was working for Hockey Canada and I left the coaching role to a scout and development role, I traveled to all the provinces in Canada and got to meet the leadership people at every branch in the province, especially when it came to a female camp. Now, that doesn't mean I met the president of the provincial association, but I met the highest ranking director of female hockey, for instance, in every province. So I got to preach about what I wanted implemented at Hockey Canada, which was a philosophy of ice time and also provide a technical base for coaches to follow so we would all be on the same page. So I'm really glad Mike got on because, Mike, we're going to be talking about a document I've emailed to all of you, produced by Hockey Newfoundland, that I believe you should pass on to anybody in your leadership network. It is a solution, Mr. Architect, to the problems that we're talking about on a weekly basis. But when I went to Newfoundland to work with a female team the first year, the province of Newfoundland, for our American friends, and not every Canadian might not understand this, it's relatively isolated. And they have a unique culture, a down-to-earth type culture that it's revealed in a movie and a play after 9/11. An awful lot of American citizens had to spend time there. And the lifestyle of the Newfies, as we call them, the most down-to-earth people I've ever met. In fact, in Eastern Canada, I have to say, very authentic population. And when I went to this camp, I really sensed that with the leadership group and sensed it working with the young athletes. And when I had this document sent to me from a leader of Hockey Nova Scotia, who's on their female council, he shared it with me, and the email I sent to you, that's his email. It isn't Hockey Nova Scotia's. It's not a proposal. This is being implemented by Hockey Newfoundland. So just as a quick analysis of it, they have broken down the age categories at the top: novice, which would be, like you have U9, U11, U13, U15, U17, and U20. And they distinguish between equal ice time and novice and atom. And it's mandatory. And then discretionary ice time at the U13 and above levels, which basically said it's equal in the first two periods. But in the third period, it's discretionary. And it can be in all special teams. And the word discretionary is on the coach. The last 3 minutes of a period and overtime. They are allowed to basically shorten the bench. I say manage the bench. Now, they've implemented this. How it's going to work? I think it's going to work because I think it's a solution. It needs to be mandated. It doesn't need to be mandated on us, but on coaches coming up, being bred as players who've experienced that upbringing. Here's the consequences. It's at the very bottom and it's fairly small print. First time there's a violation, there's a warning. Second time, 1 month suspension. Third time, 1 year. Fourth time, indefinite suspension. Upon review and is suspended indefinitely upon review by the branch. Now, the only other time you can shorten the bench, so to speak, they describe is with injury or a goalie that is down 5 goals. Pretty simple. So I'm really curious about everybody's thoughts on this. And Tim, you did have your hand up. I'm wondering if you wanted to sort of kick off some discussion on this.
No, I was actually thinking the other way, Wally, and it's good to see Mike on, but if, like I did look at the document the other day, I was going to suggest that we maybe table this whole discussion for another week until people could have a chance to really take a look at it. I took a quick look at it, and it is a really good document, but it's pretty hard to talk about if you get the gist of what it's about. But if people haven't had a chance to look at it, then it's like having a meeting where you get the agenda when you go into the meeting, and you don't, it's like, well, why didn't I get this 3 days ago so I could formulate some thoughts and give some feedback? But that was where I was going to go. But it's anyway. Hal's got his hand up, so I was gonna deflect maybe till next week. But go ahead, Hal.
Hal, your speaker.
My speaker's working good. My mic was off.
Okay.
And your mind not so well.
So I like that document. I think it's great. I had actually dinner last night with my assistant coaches from this last winter, and we were talking about how we're gonna, in our program, and I've mentioned this to you before, about putting accountability in for coaches, players, and adults. My experience is that because I've been a strong proponent for 25 years of no short benches, let the kids play, manage your bench at the end of the game if the game matters. If winning the game buys you another game, but if it doesn't, let everybody play and be smart about how you do it. The biggest problem, and we talked about this last night, is everybody agrees with this at the beginning of the season, right? Then the season starts and everybody's gone. I mean, and coaches and managers are scheduling games and there's no oversight, there's no accountability. So without having somebody in an accountability role to hold the coaches accountable, what that means, you've got to have I guess they did this in our program a year ago. I wasn't aware of it, but the guy got so burnt out because all he was doing is running around, supervising 45 teams or something. And I said, well, the answer to that is we get a group of 4 or 5 of us, and we each focus on a different age level. And we're not there to run their practices, but we need to show up and make sure that whatever framework we eventually agree on and how we're going to run practices and what types of things we're going to focus on, that they're actually doing that. And one of the guys, his son was on my team this last year. In fact, I just got a note from him. He says, the best year of hockey I ever had. Which is nice to get from a player. And even though he broke his wrist a month before the end of the season, he continued to come to practice and just skate every day. And he was on the bench, and he was terrific. He has a younger brother playing, and the dad has sort of been an assistant coach on these teams. But he says every coach has like their favorite drills, and there's no consistency in what we're doing with the players, with the kids. And I said, well, the goal is to build in at least a broad framework that the coaches can work within, whether it's hard skills, soft skills, game skills, and then give them a whole range and teach them how to do this. And then we go back and watch and see if they're doing it. And if they're not doing it, then, there will be consequences, or there'll be changes for accountability. But this requires a lot of, you got to structure it, you got to teach them, you got to bring the coaches in and explain to them what we're doing. And you got to engage them and get their buy-in. And if they don't buy in, they probably shouldn't coach in our program. They should go somewhere else, which is pretty hard in Minnesota. It's hard to go someplace else. We should give them a release and say, go somewhere else. But I don't think that'll happen. I think everybody wants it to be successful. So, we won't use that exact format, but Wally, the Newfies have got it right. And it's, but I'm sure, as Mike knows out east, this is hard to do, right? Because everybody thinks a short bench is fine because their kid's not going to be sitting on the bench when the time comes. Their kid's going to be on the power play.
Well, it's not hard to do when you're the prime minister, and there's not a democracy, the hockey governing body, that would put the rubber stamp on this. It's up to the association to buy in, and coach education begins by being certified on it. And so that's where I'm saying what I've been trying to do for years is being implemented. That's why the guy sent it to me.
Yep.
He respects what we are doing. It's what we're talking about. And lo and behold, an association, a governing body, has come out with it. And I couldn't get Hockey Alberta to even let me pilot the mission statement exercise.
Oh.
So I may go to Hockey Newfoundland to see if they would pilot this mission statement exercise, because I really believe that the exercise is something to be done at the coach's certification. But I've discovered with Tom's team, it's not as important as doing it with the parents at a practice. They all have to drive their kids to the practices. So up to the U15 age, including U15s, there's going to be parents at the practice waiting to pick them up, watching. And in the 1 hour and a half or hour ice time that I delivered to Tom's family, parents, the mission statement exercise, and they produced this mission statement that I keep in front of me, and I have it holding it up right now. It's amazing what they've gone through. So with the association here in Calgary, I'm hoping to do that at the U13 level with 3 teams next year, where I will deliver that exercise to the coaches separately, because they're not getting it revealed to it through coach education. So as an association, it's mandated that all coaches go through the exercise. But with those 3 age groups, I will personally do it with the parents. And then I'll go to games. Now, there's no problem with the allocation of ice times at the U13 level. The 2 teams that I work with, Tom's and Wes's, they're masters at playing everybody. Tom's a master at playing everybody and getting a result. And it's because he brings in the hard skills, soft skills, and the game skills in a very irresponsible manner where it gets success, much like you did, Hell, with your team. Took a season, but that's technical expertise that I'm not sure governing bodies are able to deliver on as they did back in our day. So, Mike, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Yeah, no, I did get a chance to look at the document, and that was, I definitely applaud them for putting the effort in and laying some groundwork. I mean, I don't know, the more and more I work with most youth coaches, the less mandating and the more mentorship seems to be like the best way to go. And sometimes you just got to give up on the ones that, like, if you're a parent in a youth organization that joins a coach, unless it's a brand new coach right off the boat, most likely that coach has a reputation of who they are, and you get what you get. I mean, if you sign up with a coach that has that philosophy, then you live and die by the philosophy of the coach. I don't know if the mandating, I think when you start, I don't know, it's so hard to mandate things for all of us as coaches, because, now we're, almost like, okay, well, what's somebody going to watch, every time a kid gets short shifted or doesn't get that extra minute of playing time, or, it just adds so many other layers of just anxiety for parents, coaches, administrators, where I wish our efforts could go into more mentorship and working with young coaches to begin with, and then programs. So everyone's point that you guys talk about every week is just creating ethical organizations. And I think, honestly, that falls on the governing body. The governing body has to value and support and award the organizations that are doing what's best for the kids ethically, and they have to stop rewarding and stop giving opportunity and stop giving money and stop giving all these other opportunities to organizations that continually break the rules. My last thing was, like, a couple of years ago, I'm the East District of New York, ADM director. So one of the pieces that we had in this was that all coaches in USA Hockey are mandated to wear helmets, right? This stupid rule, because it's a rule that's unenforced, and it's basically unenforceable, because nobody, like, if Mike Benelli goes into a rink and says, hey, that coach, and in USA Hockey, it's an automatic 30-day suspension, practices and games. You're on the ice, you don't have a helmet on, 30 days. I've actually never met a coach that's been suspended. Hal, maybe you have in Minnesota, but where I am in New York, Connecticut, New Jersey, Long Island, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, I've never seen a coach been suspended for 30 days for not having a helmet on. So those are like to me, that's a rule that should just be, take the rule out, because it's not enforced anyway. So why add layers of anxiety for everyone? And it's the same thing, I think, when mandating ice time. Let's educate parents and coaches, mentor them better. It's harder, no doubt about it. But I don't know. I just think reward the organizations that want to build these type of organizations, and not punish, but don't support the organizations that don't. That's just my feeling on it. Oh, you're on mute, Wally.
I just want to say, and I'm going to ask, I haven't seen a minor hockey coach at a practice in Canada without a helmet.
Yeah, and you're the hockey world, the leading hockey nation in the world. So how is it that, like, I look at
Well,
I haven't been in a
I'll
rink.
tell you why it happened, because initially, and Rick, you can tell the story. It was one of your coaches. So I'm going to ask Rick to share this. This is not a good memory to bring up, but this is where the rule became mandated, and the rink attendants were in charge of reinforcing it. Go ahead, Rick.
Yeah, it'd be about 10 years ago, 10, 12 years ago now. I don't remember the exact year, but we had an accident on ice in practice where an assistant coach was submarined from behind by someone who was sliding, lost control, lost his wheels, and he went ass over tea kettle and pummeled his head into the ice and survived for a couple of weeks before he succumbed to the injury. And that was the proverbial straw that broke the camel's back in this country. It had happened in Medicine Hat a couple of weeks previous with a less dire result, but it was just becoming too frequent an occurrence that it was mandated, and as I believe Wally said, the rink attendants enforce that. It's not even a minor hockey thing. It's a regulation. If you're on the ice, you need to have a hat on.
Well, Rick, I want to mention for Hal and Mike, it was being implemented right now. Minor hockey, it's accepted. But when you go to Hockey Canada's U18 camps and junior camps and women's camps, nobody wears a helmet.
That's leadership, Wally.
Yeah. But I'm just saying here, I attended what do they call it when you observe a HP3 clinic or HP highest level clinic run by Hockey Canada, and they brought in all the best skill coaches and all the highest level coaches for this clinic, and they went on the ice with the skill coaches, and the skills coaches didn't have helmets, and the players, pardon me, the skills coaches didn't have helmets. And the coaches that were there didn't have helmets. And I'm on the sideline, and Mike Barra, who was overseeing this as sort of the director, I said, "Where are the helmets?" And blah 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 blah. He just babbled back and forth, and he said, "You better talk to Corey. Corey is the next in command." And I said, "I will." And I did talk to Corey, but the ability to say, "Hey, you want to coach? You wear a helmet." We'll find somebody that's willing to wear a helmet if they want to coach at this level. That's how important your life is. Vanity is not.
Hey, we're all different, of course, politically, but in a country where we're fortunate enough to have public healthcare, where it's not perfect by any stretch, but basically, I am paying for Rick's injury. If Rick chooses not to wear a helmet and gets injured on the ice, if you want healthcare, you need to have a helmet on. Otherwise, anyway, that's just a sort of sidebar, but people think it's free choice, but I'm paying for your health care. It's the same as seatbelts and a lot of other things, but
and the seatbelt idea is one that entered my mind, Tim. It's exactly that. It's the same as seatbelts. It took a while for it to happen, but hell, and then we'll go to Rick again.
So this is an interesting topic for me, and Michael, you'll enjoy this this background on the helmets on coaches in the United States. That started here in Minnesota when I was a director of the safety committee for Minnesota hockey, and we tried for 3 years to mandate helmets on coaches because the leadership wanted it. And so I actually ran, it was a self-reporting program of injuries, not including coach injuries, but player injuries, because we were trying to figure out where all the injuries were, what levels they were at, and what kind of injuries. And we had a couple medical people on this committee, and people self-reported from 3 districts in Minnesota. And then we had a nurse follow up on what the outcomes were. But as part of this, we discovered that in November, December, and January, every 6 days, a coach went down, hit his head, and had to go to the hospital. Every 6 days. And we've lost in Minnesota since 2000, probably 5 coaches have died. And while in the middle of doing this program, we had a coach go down. He's coaching his 8-year-old son. Got same story as yours, Rick. He got wiped out from behind. He went down, no helmet, because coaches didn't wear helmets on. And he got airlifted to, the trauma center downtown Minneapolis, and they cut his skull open, and he survived. But his wife reached out to me because she knew we were trying to collect this data, and I invited her to the winter meeting of Minnesota hockey, which was like 10 days later. And she came with photos of her husband, shaved head, the scar like this on the other side, and started to tell the story of what this is potentially going to mean for their family. And almost everybody was in tears, or all pretty close to it. And the board and I wasn't even a voting member of the board, and the board took a break and they came back. And this was in January in probably 2008 or something like that. They came back and said, as of February 1, all coaches have to wear a helmet on ice. And boy, did my email lit up for 2 years about this with hate email from coaches. But we did that, and a month later, the Atlantic District, maybe Michael, or the Florida, whatever district that is, they also implemented it right away. During this whole process, USA Hockey wanted to do it, but they got so much pushback that they were afraid to do it. But then when Minnesota did it, that was in June of that, at the annual Congress, that they mandated for coaches across the United States. You're right, enforcement's an issue. But the other thing is the only way that USA Hockey would do it is that the National Training and Development Program and the junior coaches, because they are professionals, they got exempted from wearing helmets on the ice. And then I tried to get the National High School Federation to go down that road, because I know a couple high school coaches have gotten hurt badly, had injuries, and they don't want anything to do with it. But my point is, for whatever a helmet costs, $125, it's the cheapest insurance policy to save your life that you could ever buy. And I see guys occasionally, and I just call their district director and say, hey, you got a coach out here with no helmet, or they don't buckle them. And now and have that buckled. The helmet leaves your head before your head hits the ice. And we did some research on it. If you get knocked down from behind, your head's going 30 miles an hour when it hits the ice. You know what your car does when it hits something? 30 miles an hour. So I had 3 concussions where my helmet got knocked off, one in high school, one in college. And I got knocked out the first time. And so I kind of know what it feels like. And so I actually, I'm pretty lucky. I didn't get a letter. So Mike, that's the backstory on the whole thing. So if somebody's bitching about it, tell them to email me. I think it's one of the best things I've ever done for hockey in this country. And I know Canada had started it in 1 or 2 provinces, and then Canada joined in at the same time and made it but enforcement's a problem for sure. And that's my story.
Who had their hand up next, but I'm guessing Rick, then
I think it was Tom.
Mike, and I'm
It was
not
Tom.
sure. Who
Yeah,
was it, Tim?
I think it was
Tom, go ahead.
Yeah, along with this subject, I asked, we had this drill where you put the puck on the other side and the team jump off the bench and they go opposite directions, race for the puck. And one of my assistant coaches was doing it, and I kind of asked her not to. And there's a guy named Dale I play hockey with. And in the Alberta Junior, what happened is they're having the bag skate at the end, and a lot of guys took their helmet off, put it on the net. So the coach had, the big figure 8 around the ice. And when you blow the whistle, everybody goes hard as they can. Well, Dale, they went as hard as they can. He collided with his best friend. And he whacked the back of his head, and he ended up dying. And it's still affecting Dale now. And, in those days, nobody really knew counseling or anything. Said the only thing he heard is his dad said, "Can't you keep your damn head up?" And so, you hit the back of your head. About 2 years ago, this guy was going the wrong way. And that's one of the worst things that can happen in hockey. Guys turn their back on the play and you're flowing with the play. And he ran into me and I hit the back of my head. It broke my helmet. I didn't get knocked out or anything, but I didn't feel very well. And boy, if I didn't have a helmet on then, I'm sure I would have cracked my skull. So, and helmets weren't even mandated till I was 17. And I remember the referees refused to wear helmets in Calgary. And so the next year they made it that the refs would be suspended. So it was kind of option. So the last play of the season, we took off our helmets. I was playing juvenile, took off our helmets, and 10 seconds left in the game, we were getting knocked out of the playoffs. So I golfed the puck. I put my stick way back with the 2 hands together to golf it. Well, my best friend skating behind me, I hit him on top of the head with my stick, and he had to go get 5 or 6 stitches. So anyways, those are my stories that I think helmets are pretty important.
Who's next, Tim?
I think Rick, then Mike. Hey, we can talk mouth guards too if you want another sidebar, but that's another topic.
Get rid of those damn things. Honest to God.
Okay, Mike.
I'm just gonna think real quick. I didn't want this to go to a helmet police thing. I just my whole point was I just don't understand why you wouldn't wear a helmet, but it's okay. I get it. You want to wear your toque and look good out there and wear your branded hat. You look good, but I think it just goes to the mandated part, right? I know where I am in the East Coast, it's mandated. But if there's no enforcement, then there is no mandate. And frankly, if a guy, I think it's so sad to Rick's story. Obviously this person's family and the person dying themselves is sad enough. But imagine the trauma of these kids watching this person bleed out on the ice, basically, right? And I get videos, and down here, everybody knows I'm a little crazy with the helmets, and the buckle is a big thing for me too. I'm like, well, don't even have the helmet on then if it's gonna pop over your head anyway. Or the guys wearing, they get away with not really wearing a real helmet anymore. They want to wear the old Jofas because they have a helmet on, but it's really not protecting them. But my point was I've seen so much videos of people head bouncing off the ice, and the only people the people that really advocate for helmets are the ones that almost that have the helmets that cracked and got hit from behind. And now in our world of station-based practices and getting 60 or 70 little 8-year-olds and 7-year-olds on the ice, it even becomes more important because even you're the best player in the world, you don't know where things are, you can't determine where things are coming from. Like I know when I do my clinics, we have very distinct teaching points about where you stand in a station-based practice, having your butt on the boards, and when you bring kids in, you don't have them, you don't come to center ice, little things like that. But again, that's more education and mentorship than mandating. And when you mandate it after somebody bounces their head off the ice, I guess it's too late for that person, right? But it's just I hate having a lot of rules and regulations and mandates and that don't get enforced anyway. I think that just causes more problems than it helps.
Mike, before we go to Rick, I'm just saying that why in Canada does everybody wear a helmet? And the mandate over time, no. If you said, well, if they dropped that rule in Canada, there would be an outcry.
Like Matt, yeah, right.
So, Rick, go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to add that the incident with Ron didn't happen in the meat of the practice where there was a lot of high intensity activity going on. This was right at the start of practice when players were just skating around, getting their legs under them. No vigorous activity was going on. Ron was face to face with another coach having a conversation, and this thing just happened behind him. So, the idea that I stay out of the way when the drills are going on and I have my butt to the boards or whatever, it can happen at the most unexpected time. And it only takes one incident and it's fatal. It makes it hard to understand why people would resist that, Mike. And I agree with you. If you're not going to have any enforcement, then don't have the rule. And too many associations are afraid, or they use the excuse that, well, then, we don't have anybody that wants to coach. They want to have some freedoms. And we've run into that before. Not in the helmet issue, but in numerous other things. This Newfoundland policy, I'm sure, will run into some of the same pushbacks.
Yeah, and it's to me, it's the same thing. How when we went through the cross ice program, like when we mandated 8U cross ice, every single organization like, oh, our kids are going to quit. They're never going to do it. I'm like, okay, they're not going to play hockey anymore because they're playing cross ice. And then guess what happened? They all play cross ice. So it's one of those things where, Wally, and I don't know, it's an interesting question. Like, is it just I think what Canada's done right is it put the onus on the associations and the building supervisors to be the ones that enforce this, not your peers, not the other coach. It's the person that closes the engine, the Zamboni doors and said, hey, you two guys, what are you doing out here with a helmet? You got to get off the ice. Like it creates a different narrative. Instead of me saying, hey, Wally, I need you to wear a helmet. Mike, I played Division I hockey. I don't like wearing a helmet. It really affects the way I see the ice. And I like to be able to be out there and feel like, I'm out there with the kids. I'm like, it doesn't make any sense to me. So I'll always come back. My quick helmet story. I had John Tonelli and Tommy Laidlaw doing a clinic with me. And John's had been coaching youth hockey for a number of years, understood that, although he didn't wear a helmet in his practices, I said, hey, this is a USA Hockey Clinic. I'm going to be taking a lot of social media pictures. It'd be great if you could put a helmet on. It's going to look good. I'm going to take nice pictures of you with the kids, and it's going to be great. So, John went to his bag, no problem, helmet on the ice. Tommy Laidlaw, hey, Tommy, I need you to wear a helmet. I didn't wear a helmet. I goes, you know what, Mike? You want me to wear a helmet? You put it on my head. So, and I didn't put it on his head, but I'm just saying, when you get guys like, I think it's just, and he did eventually put a helmet on for me, but I think it's just, it all depends on where the person's background is and where they're from. I know Ron Duguay comes out with us with the Junior Rangers all the time. He will not wear a helmet. He will not put it on his head. And I think Tim made a little point there, because I get on the USA Hockey guys all the time when I see their social media posts. If your 18U coaches are going to be on the ice without helmets, and you're gonna go out there and tout them as non-professional coaches, that's setting a pretty bad example, in my opinion. If you're going to mandate it for all the other non-professional coaches, then set a great example. Throw a helmet on. Be a leader. and suck it up. Put a nice brand new USA Hockey sticker on that helmet, and everyone will love it. Sell some advertising on the coaching helmets. They'll love it. Make some money.
Mike, I just wanted to make the point as you talk, thinking of this. Who arranged to have those two come out to help you?
Well, me.
Okay, and when you're talking to Newfoundland, at any branch, they hire coaches. You invite people to come out for a Hockey USA event. So before you take them, before you agree to it, the condition is you need a player, an former NHLer that will come out and honor that and avoid the sensitivity of it. So that's what I'm saying when you say, well, gee, you can't mandate it. The leadership group wants it. When an association interviews coaches about ice allocation, they hire them with the understanding of the policy, or they don't hire them to deal with them during the season. And the solution that's been mentioned, I think Tim did before, was having an ethical director in an association, but also having an age level supervisor that supervises the allocation of ice time.
Yep.
And it can be a parent on each team designated by the board, because parents are afraid to speak up. Do you think they like their kid not playing? They're afraid to speak up because nobody speaks up. So if the leadership doesn't stand up like Newfoundland has, and the leadership below them at the association level, they're the ones that mandate the policy through the process. We have these standards. If you can't abide by them, there's no excuse that, well, we can't get coaches, because the people that will volunteer, they'll wear a helmet. You might not get an NHL coach or an ex-player, but I think over time this is going to change. It takes time. I mean, we've been talking about this for 30 years.
Yeah.
Hell, go ahead.
Well, not to beat the dead horse, but in Minnesota, your local association can be fined $500 if the district's notified you've got coaches on the ice without helmets. And so they kind of run it that way. Now, how often it happens, I don't know, because I'm not on the board anymore and that kind of stuff. But I look at it from this point of view. This is a leadership issue. And coaches are supposed to wear helmets. Players are supposed to wear mouth guards, but they don't. And for many years as a coach, the refs were all over mouth guards, because that's an easy one, right? Well, now they don't care anymore, because everybody knows that if you're wearing a face mask, the mouth guard is a useless piece of equipment. It might be even a bad piece of equipment. I've been through all this whole stuff. It doesn't prevent concussions any more than the stop patch on the back of the jersey at a bucket jersey every year prevents kids from hitting from behind. And so, Michael, we have all these rules that we don't enforce. And then what does that message go to the kids? What does that go to the players? The rules are a suggestion, not hard and fast. So I don't know. I mean, I wear a helmet because I've been knocked out a couple of times, so that's just to save me. And I tell coaches, you go to practice with your kids. Are you planning on going home? Or do you want to go to the hospital in an ambulance and maybe never come home? It's a pretty easy decision if you just lay it out for them. But I know we've had problems here too. So anyways, I think Tim was going to take issue with my mouth guard thing.
Well, I was, but the truth is there's science on both sides.
Yeah.
That it can be helpful in terms of preventing, maybe not preventing concussion, but severity. Not so much for banging your head, but for blows to the side or the front or whatever. I have a great mouth guard story, but I won't bore you with it at this time. Basically, saved me in a lot of ways, a couple of times.
Just more.
Tom, are the old timers wearing mouth guards?
No,
No way.
a lot of guys do. I'll tell you, I got to tell you a story because it's a pretty funny story. This one guy from Flin Flon, and he got banned, like blackballed in the NHL. He was Brandon's best player, and he went and played at Michigan Tech, and they won a national, and he was All-American, all this kind of stuff. So anyways, we're playing, and a guy puts a stick in front of him on a hard pass. It goes up into his face.
Mm-hmm.
So he kind of checks his mouth a little bit, goes to the bench, and he plays the rest of the game. And so we go in the dressing room, and he goes and gets a beer, hands a beer, pays for everybody. Then he takes his mouth guard out, and his teeth are in the mouth guard. You gotta remember, this guy's from Flin Flon, eh? His teeth are in the mouth guard. And then he takes a few more beer, and he goes to see his friend, a dentist. And what happened is, I think it cost him about $10,000. And because he had a shield, a half shield, and a mouth guard, the insurance that we all have paid about $2,500 of it. But anyways, I don't know if he would have saved any more teeth with a mouth guard, but at least it held him there for a while.
Tom, a good story, but you said one word, insurance. And back in the day, and I brought this up, Canadian Amateur Hockey Association contacted Dave King and myself to create a module on ethical coaching because insurance rates were going up. That's the reason. Cost. It's costing them too much money. And it hasn't been implemented. And there's so many other factors to them. The mission statement exercise just being a talking point, a foundational, the roots of what you're doing, why you're doing it, for the rationale, which is obvious to us, isn't obvious to everyone. So it's a matter of bringing the pieces together and keep them banging on the door. Mike, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say I got to run, but I do like what Hockey Nova Scotia's done. I mean, I do like the fact that they're addressing the issue, right, and they're informing their coaches and they're giving. I mean, I just think it's hard. I mean, I'd love to see how they actually enforce it and make sure parents don't, take advantage of it with the the stopwatches and the live barn and this person was out every single time. I just think it comes back to mentorship and education and just really working on coaches that listen. In the long term, it's going to be great that this kid got an opportunity to be on the ice with a minute left in the game, and maybe you don't win it, and maybe you lose it, and maybe but this is I mean, if we can just educate people that it's the educational piece that's more important than anything else. Again, I'm not talking about major, junior, or college, or pro, and where people are going to lose their jobs. I'm talking about, just establishing these standards in youth hockey organizations so that when I'm a parent and I go there, maybe I see that these are things we stand for and these are things we want to accomplish. And I would hope that draws more people to your organization and thus you make more money and you have more success and you win more championships. I just think it's, and you've said it a number of times, Wally, I mean, even in your relationship with Hockey Canada, it just takes a lifetime, right, of commitment to try to make these changes. And I don't know. I just love working with the coaches that want to make those changes and want to make the difference and want to take these recommendations. That's the reason I'm on this call every week is that I love being able to take these little pieces of recommendations and bring them on to the people that want them, not mandating them to people that don't. But No, I think it's great. You know, like I said, I like the efforts there, and it'll be interesting to see and watch them enforce it in real time.
Well, I'm going to follow up with, you mentioned Hockey Nova Scotia. It's actually Hockey Newfoundland.
Oh, Newfoundland, sorry. Yeah.
But the Hockey
It's all
Nova Scotia,
Canada to me up there. Don't worry about it.
but the key to the communication is that province, its leadership group is taking the lead. And I'm going to follow up to find out how they are able to enforce it. I think that's absolutely critical. And I think what you say is absolutely mentorship's required. There's no doubt about it. But all of these things, when you add them all up, presented at the right time and the right way, can provide a more viable opportunity for success. The accountability of ice allocation of ice time and tracking that. The simple fact is, if everybody feels valued, you're going to have a emotional energy with that group and a team to be more successful. And those people that win championships more often than not do that. So that's sort of the foundation of everything. But
I agree. I'm gonna jump too. Tom, don't tell any more mouthguard stories until next week. But I'm gonna. I don't want to miss those.
okay,
and Flin Flon. I've always thought that was a fake place, but I guess.
Thanks for coming on, Mike. I was hoping we could get Peter on because he's working with an association.
Yeah.
And my imagination, as with you, is who is the executive member of an association, and what would his take on this? Having that conversation, it's a stepping point to see how they respond to it. Oh, it's really good, but you know.
Hey, so listen, if you want to re-engage this formally next Thursday.
Yeah.
Where I can't do next Thursday, but at a future date, I definitely would invite some program presidents on. That would I think would be open to debate. I think it would be an interesting, and I don't think they'd mind being on like a live show. You know what I mean? Like where somebody's judging them. But it would be interesting. I agree with you.
No, well, I think you set up a group of 2 or 3 like-minded people like that.
Yeah.
We'll provide them with the literature to look at before the meeting, and we'll talk to them about why it will work, why it won't work. And we're going to follow up with myself in the up and coming season. The province is actually initiating it and how they're going to implement it. So it's a great initiative, Mike. So I'll leave it with you. When you get people ready together, I think we can do it now, and I think we'll do it again. But if I get a hold of Hockey Newfoundland people, I know the Hockey Nova Scotia is excited about their experimenting with it.
Yeah. I got to get the guys that think it's all BS. That's who I need to get on.
Well,
all right, very good. I'm going to work on it. But thanks, guys. Enjoy your weekend.
Take care.
Take care.
Well, Rick, what do you think?
What?
Well, you don't really need this, but the game needs it, and because you get it already. So what's the thinking of your association in your community? Is bench allocation a problem anymore or not?
I don't believe that it's ever not going to be a problem, Wally, but I kind of like what the Hockey Newfoundland is done in, as you say, taking a leadership role, but in a way it puts a bit of a hammer in the hands of the wrong people. And the simple thing of 3 shifts in the third period. Who's going to monitor that? Again, one more layer of oversight that's required. And certainly all these things can be argued as they are now, Everything is subject to the viewer's point of view and what they recall seeing. Yeah, it's not a fix all for anything. But it is a step in the right direction.
Tom, I'm thinking, you don't need it because you're doing that. In fact, Rick and Tom, my take when I read it was sort of a red flag, as if they follow that from the beginning of the season, and they're going to they're allowed to create their special teams still in the third period. I've always operated on, from the beginning of the year, everybody plays everything, and you can play different lines at different times, but they all get opportunity to play all special teams to develop.
Well, Wally, I'm kicking myself on our final game there because I should have done that.
Yeah.
We got a power play, and I got one D pair that one of them, the puck is not her friend, and we're leading 2-0. And she goes to pick up the puck and skates over top of the puck, leaves it in front of our net. They score, and they ended up tying the game on our power play. And if I would have put a better D pair out there, like someone, they're good defensively, but not a power play unit. And I think it cost everybody because we would have got more games, of course, because we dominated the game, but we lost it. But anyways, so sometimes in a big game like that, I could have just had them go out the next shift, after the power play. So there is a time
an aspect of it.
Yeah.
Rick, if you had any of those moments where in the back of your head you wanted to get different people out there, but you didn't because of the team building factor?
Nothing that comes to mind, to be honest with you, Wally. I'm sure I know I've been guilty of both sides.
Yeah.
Of being too aggressive in that area and being too lenient and too caring and understanding, and then having to answer for why did you have that guy on the ice at that particular time.
Yeah.
I mean, it was good rationale, and it was all in my mind at least. It was all for the betterment of the player, but then you have to keep in mind that there's not only one player involved, there's a number of them. And if you do something that takes something away from the group as a whole, is that the right thing to do? It's a question without an answer.
Yeah. Like I find many coaches won't put a player out there, and it's sort of an excuse. They don't want to set them up for failure. Now, Tom, in your case, the defense pairing and the player that made the mistake was one of your most skilled players. The puck might not be her friend, but she's her best skater, not the best decision maker. And
well, that's the deal, is not a player for offensive situations.
Yeah.
She can track anybody down defensively because she might be the fastest skater in the league.
Yeah.
In a city championship game, it probably wouldn't have hurt to shuffle a line that they got out when the power, when it was over, and maybe get an extra shift on the penalty kill because they're very good at that.
Yeah. Now this
better coaching decision on my part.
So this may seem trivial, and I've told the story before, Rick. After the 2002 Olympics, I went and watched my nephew's son play in a tournament in Winnipeg. And it's a private school, and it's a U11 group, whole ice hockey. And they had rolled the lines all game. They're down 2-1. And there's a minute left. His son's on. And they did have one ringer with a minute left. Off comes his son, and out goes the ringer. And I, standing beside my nephew, his father, I mentioned, okay, this is now a lose-lose situation. They need to give themselves an opportunity to win. And I explained they're likely not going to tie the game. They're going to lose the game. So they lose the game, and they also lose the spirit of that one player who went off, who's going to have doubt about his own ability, and possibly the other teammates who might be in those similar rankings on the depth charts of a U11 team. So it was a lose-lose situation. Now, they might have taken the kid off, and they might have tied it, and they might have won. So it's a lose-win situation. But you want to give yourself an opportunity to win, or win, lose. Win is leave them out there. And if you do lose, you've lost the game, but you've really built the team. You haven't lost the spirit and belief of every member of the team. And the ripple effect of making that change on the kid in the stand or parents in the stands who don't say anything, don't speak out. That's why this allocation piece is necessary. It's just gone south to the point where one branch has produced a document to mandate what's going to be done. And everything that Mike Benelli said is right. It's the enforcement, but at least a governing body has given a hammer to the leadership group to reinforce that. So, Peter, welcome aboard.
Yeah, I feel like I feel like the guy that comes to the party late and everybody's gone, and it's just the guys there that are cleaning up.
Well, you're right, Peter, but you got the email with a document.
I did, yeah.
And I want you to look at it. My question for you, and it's a homework assignment,
Okay.
is after you read the document, I was thinking that you and Mike Benelli and Hell, when you're working with an association, which you are, show them the document. You've looked at it, get your take on it, how you feel about it. And then how does the people in the association you're trying to get on board feel about it? Because to me, it's a fantastic document. It's a way of dealing with allocation of ice time in a black and white fashion. There are some gray areas within it, but there has to be a policing of it. But it's
Yeah,
sure
I
nice.
know that. I know
Go
that in
ahead.
the one the one I've been dealing with, Wally, what they have is a policy that everyone plays, and the coach has the discretion with the last 2 minutes to do what they want with the ice at that point. Now, that brings up another question. So that gives you, the coach, the ability to say, okay, I'm going to play these kids to win a game. But again, now we talk about to what end, what messages that send to the other kids. And we're talking to the younger kids for sure, right? Your squirts and even your peewees. You're a peewee B player who didn't make the A team to begin with, and now you're being told that you're really not one of the better players on the peewee B team. And at the end of the day, how much does the fact that you didn't win, quote unquote, together affect your team culture and that? So that's one thing that I've always kind of struggled with that they do.
No, and to me, that's the art of coaching. Like, I leave them out there, win or lose. And leaving them out there, I've won more often than I've lost. In fact, when you leave them out there, you never lose.
Right. I mean, at the end of the day, I'd rather lose 3-2 and have every kid feel like they contributed, as opposed to going home and saying, well, coach, I guess you didn't think I was good enough, or mom or dad, the boy or girl says, I wish I was out there because I think I could have done something. Right. So I agree with you.
You didn't give them that opportunity to succeed and
exactly.
be the best. Now, I like Tom, I made the same mistake, but I was lucky. It's a national championship where calling a timeout, leaving the line out there that was in play, and national championship in overtime when we're getting outplayed. I left the line out there, and as soon as the puck was dropped, we had a 2-on-1 going on the ice, and the weakest forward on that line came right off the ice. I didn't put out our Haley Wickenheiser, and I probably should have, but it wasn't even in my mindset at that point that I was relying on 2 Olympians to be on this club team playing against a team with 9 Olympians. So that's a case of absolute win-win coaching. The girl that came off delivered a message. I wish you'd put Haley out there, and probably she was right, but I hadn't done that all season. It was a habit. So sort of an example at the extremely competitive level. I don't care if you're talking AAA, AA, NHL. You get conditioned to doing things certain ways and experimenting, and I don't experiment with it anymore to the point where I've gotten fired for doing that. And I'm not sorry for it, but if I wanted to keep my job, I might have done things differently, but I didn't, and I'm happy with what I've done. So
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, you got to be friends with the guy that you see in the mirror shaving every morning.
yeah, you're right. You got her. Well, look, I don't know what else anybody's got to say. This is going to be one of the shorter sessions, but I'm looking forward to seeing how this goes. I'm going to be having conversations with the people in Newfoundland and in Nova Scotia about it, and just going to be asking some questions, and maybe we'll have them on at some point in time to talk about how things are going or aren't going. But that's something down the road because the problems are the same. Now, Peter, I'm just curious, in your area, are there coaches that aren't wearing helmets on the ice at practice?
So the USA Hockey has a rule that you have to wear a helmet. However, I will say I have seen, I suppose, some Kevlar baseball hats out there. So it actually, when it first came out, it was really, really heavily enforced. Now not so much. I mean, organizationally, the organization that I work with, that I'm trying to help out, they're really good at it. They, like to a coach, they wear them and they understand the importance of the rule. I mean, I think we've all been in situations where I can remember years ago when it wasn't a rule, skating around at the beginning of practice, coaches 3 abreast and having a conversation, and then all of a sudden the guy in the middle disappeared because some kid slid into the back of his heels and down he went. Fortunately, he didn't get injured, but so this organization's been pretty good about it, but I can't say that it's 100% across the board.
I think I can say it is 100% across the board in minor hockey in Canada.
Yeah, I mean, it's a rule that it's supposed to be, but whether or not that actually happens, like I say here, I know it doesn't happen 100% of the time.
So I guess my question is, and maybe Rick could speak to it, is how come it's happening in Canada and not in the USA? Is it historical? Is it a matter of time? Or like right now, I don't think a minor hockey coach would think of going out on the ice without a helmet. Or at your AAA level, Rick?
For us, Wally, it's mostly I'm sorry, Rick, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but
No.
so I got a thought quick that I don't want to lose. is the younger players are really good at it. And the younger coaches, the younger coaches are really good at it. The guys that I want to say are like 50 plus, maybe not so much, because they still came from an era where you did not have to do that. So I think that's the age group that probably struggles with it. I think the younger guys and gals that I see out there do a really good job of respecting the rule and adhering to it.
To answer your question, Wally, I can't say that since it was mandated that I have observed anyone not wearing one, but I don't doubt that there are people out there across the country that are still resisting and still would go out on the ice without a helmet until somebody points it out to them that you're not supposed to be out there. And yes, I know in our area, the rinks I work in, and I know in Calgary, it's mandated from the building side of things. The arena staff will enforce that for you, but I can't say that's happening, particularly in rural arenas around the country. It's quite likely that there are people still going out there without helmets.
Well, I had an occasion this year, brought a skating coach out, and he never wears a helmet. You know, he was traveled the world feature skater for Holiday on Ice and all this kind of stuff. And the parents made him get a helmet. A parent went to his car and got a helmet because to them it looked abnormal to have a coach on the ice without a helmet on. And, so it's kind of in the culture now that you wear a helmet when you're, when you're on the ice.
But here's a different wrinkle, fellas. Have you ever watched a figure skating session on the ice?
Oh, yeah.
Any helmets out there?
They're never.
Good point.
I was watching one the other day before we practiced at Rose Con there. A lot of figure skating. And the guy's holding, how they have a harness on the kid when they're teaching them the jumps. Whereas this kid has fallen almost every jump. The kid is going down, and they're pretty good at falling, hitting their hips, and all that, because you don't see them whack their noggin very much. But if you do, it's not a good thing.
Just takes one.
Yeah.
I wonder if they've had any incidents in figure skating. Have you heard of any?
Well, they must have. I mean, how could you not?
Yeah, I don't follow.
Especially if you hit your heels or something. If you hit your heels when you land, you're going to go over on your back of your head,
Yeah. Well, that's a question I'm going to ask of some people I know in figure skating circles. But wow, that's a scary point to be made because I can't imagine the psychological factor. I know when Jen Botterill was skating with the CBC television show, what is it called, On Ice? She was
Stars on Ice.
Yeah, that she was really scared, like without a helmet.
And they're learning stuff. They're learning to figure skate, and they're hockey players.
Yeah.
That they do a dance thing, Pete. They do a dance thing.
Yeah. And I felt that it affected her skating because of all the skaters, female skaters that I know in hockey, she was the best. But when she skated and had to do deliberate tricks, she was hesitant. And I think she'd admit that there was some people are different, but it definitely did have an effect on her and the way she dared to do things. I don't think she did many jumps, but Natalie Spooter, on the other hand, did. So it was interesting to watch. So, look, Peter, is there anything going on in your world? Before you came on, I mentioned. I'll just share with all of you. This Newfoundland proposal, not a proposal. This Newfoundland allocation policy it's something that definitely fits in with the Sharks. But prior to having that, I wanted to throw out some ideas about future sessions. I'm looking forward to Mike Benelli getting a hold of some presidents of associations to come on to share the Newfoundland ice allocation policy with and get their take with the Sharks and hear where they're at on its possible implementation or not. But one of the things I was hoping to do in the near future is get Scott Rivet on. He was the coach of the Mount Royal University hockey team that won the national championship. And to defeat both Concordia and the University of Montreal on their home turf, being ranked number 8 in Canada, playing against the top 8, and to win the gold medal was quite an achievement. And I know Scott very well, and so we've had him on the Sharks before, and I think it was at a coffee session, Tom, where he shared his academic groupings, where he had student athletes who had common classes together and breaks or spare time together where they would became academic teams. So he created academic teams and they competed all year to keep track of their progress at school. And it had a tremendous impact on their actual academic achievement, but more importantly, team building and communication that went on within the team. So that was one of the things I wanted to talk to him. But the other thing I wanted to find out is his story from COVID, because I watched his team play after COVID. He had 14 players not dressed for games. Because of COVID, there was veteran players could come back. He still did his recruiting, and he prided himself in the fact that nobody quit. He was able to maintain that synergy of ice time, keeping players happy, believing themselves, enjoying the experience, to the point where what he achieved this past week is nothing short of but remarkable. So him being a guest down the road is, I'm looking forward to trying to set that one up. And it just would be such an interesting story. So anybody else got any other ideas?
I took that thing and I implemented at SATE. You know, after he said that. But I know COVID really affected our team.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have an entire legal pad full because I kept notes when we would meet 2-3 times a week during COVID, and I have an entire legal pad full of activities and exercises and things that we did. Everything from we created an ice hockey Jeopardy session that we did together to I brought in guest speakers that talked about everything from investment. Opportunities when you get out of college, how just anything I could think of that, again, many of the topics came from the boys to keep them involved. We created a third jersey that year, which took 5 weeks. We had our guys separated into 5 different teams, and they all ended up collaborating and coming up with 5 different jersey combinations that we whittled down to 3, then we whittled down to 2, then we whittled down to 1. So we did a lot of different interesting things. And I think, oddly, that those types of things that we did probably were one of the reasons that we, again, picked 7th and went to the championship game that same next year.
Peter, I've just earmarked that as a topic down the road. And you can, I may be phrasing it wrong, but it sounds like the impact of your success that season was more about the importance of the activities you did that created a synergy in a team to be better than you would normally be. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think that is fair because that was the entire COVID year because we didn't find out until very late in the game. Originally, we were supposed to be coming back that end of that year, and the school decided not to because they could do everything online and remotely, and all the abundance of caution, all that kind of good stuff, all the words they like to throw around and use, which they believed in. So we had to find a way to keep not only the team together, but the 13 new recruits that were coming in to make them feel like they were actually part of something. Because at least the guys that were there had something to remember as a culture that they knew was there. Whereas the new players, they had no idea. But we had to create a lot.
Well, I didn't do a very good job of that one. We went till I think the end of October practicing, and I brought in about 7 good players because I had, you have the cycles of your better players all getting older. And I had the top scorer in the league, the best goalie. I think we would have won that COVID year, or we would have at least been in the final. And all these other players, they never saw the inside of the building ever. They weren't allowed on campus. They never saw the arena, and when we got shut down, I didn't do very much with them. And then all of the other, like 3/4 of the returning players graduated, and only 2 of those new players came back. So basically we started with 15 of our 19 players were first year, which in a league where you can play 5 years is tough to win, and yeah, I didn't do a very good job of that online stuff. And, I kind of regret that part of it.
Peter, I just jot down in a note here. This is a topic, and you might pencil it down because I'm going to ask you to probably lead a session on that season and the success you had. And I know we had a presentation on winning and Barry Pern's idea of drills and things that haven't been done that led to success and the X's and O's. But my question to all of you is the activities that you've done that maybe you don't do, coaches don't do because they're tied up in the hockey and the practice time. We need to make better use of that time. We don't need to be practicing as much.
Yeah, and while we have, because our school was NCAA Division II school, so it's kind of the interesting fall somewhere in between Division I and Division III. I mean, really the caliber of play is Division III, but we have the clearinghouse, so academically it's a bit more demanding. But they actually have nationwide contests for community service, and our little small school in Connecticut, which under 1,000 students. Our hockey team actually led all teams in the nation that year. Prior to that, when we could actually do community service, in community service. So I agree with you that I really feel like the things you do away from the ice are not really taken advantage of to the point where you can create a certain culture. And again, if I care about you, I'm going to play for you. And I think that's something that I'm not saying everyone can do it, but at least at the university level, I think it's really important because there's so many distractions and so many ways those guys and gals, I think, can go.
Peter, it's amazing when you said the word community service, community. Early in COVID, I got a hold of Howie Draper, who is head coach of the University of Alberta women's hockey program, won numerous national championships. And Howie was a part of a university that initiated the mission statement activity with its sporting groups, particularly hockey. So on the men's side, they won numerous championships. And the culture that they create with their hockey program is really why they've been successful. And when I looking for something to do during COVID, I decided to call lots of coaches and presidents and leaders of organization groups to do the mission statement exercise with me to try to promote its merit and implementation. So I did it with Howie, and I knew he had done it before. And the question that the exercise begins with is everybody has to write down 3 things they want to accomplish this year. And it's COVID season, so I'm talking to Howie, and I asked him, what do you as a coach or you and your staff as coaches want to accomplish? And he says, Wally, we've already done that because they do the exercise. So he said the 3 things we came up with as a staff. Number 1 was personal improvement as coaches to get better. Number 2, player/student improvement. Number 3, community. That's all he put down. So what you've said, community service, it resonates with me more than it would to most people, because here you've got a winning coaching school that walks the talk in the way it does things. And they're an excellent academic school, but they also are concerned about the student athlete and them becoming better people. So I really think that we've got another good topic to go on, Peter. And COVID it was an opportunity which some people have taken advantage of to really be able to get into those things. And you seem to have done a pretty remarkable job of it. And I'm sure you could describe some of the activities in more detail. And editing that and sharing it with the hockey community, they would take away a lot of ideas where instead of having 5 practices a week, they might give up 1 and dedicate itself to these exercises. I think we underestimate the value. So
Yeah.
whether
Yeah. I mean, talent without a positive culture, I think always underachieves.
yeah. Okay.
All right. I appreciate your time, guys. I'm gonna scoot here and scrape some more ice.
Okay. Take care. Thanks for coming on, Peter. Talk to you later.
Take care, fellas.
Take care. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna clock out too, fellas.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll just
Tom,
say
I shut off our recording, so I wanted to ask you about